Our guest speaker today is Naval Chief Warrant Officer Tony Woody.
Chief Petty Officer.
Oh.
Now, warrant officer is a commissioned officer who was a Chief Petty Officer before, and it's a special rank.
So it's Chief Petty?
Chief Petty Officer, yeah.
Chief Petty Officer. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
He's from New Hampshire, so he's driven a long way. And he's going to share his transformative experience that he had during a near fatal aircraft accident. He's traveled a great distance, and you know, our policy is, I mean, we're free, but occasionally we do take up a collection, and since Tony is staying overnight at a local hotel, I'd like to pass the hat. Bob, could you do that for me? And it would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to everybody today. A little about me. I grew up in a little town in East Texas. I'd never been anywhere until I joined the Navy. Never flown on an airplane until I joined the Navy and got on the plane to go to boot camp.
Tony, could you get closer to the mic?
Oh, okay, sorry. And is that better?
Yeah.
I have to make sure I get the mouse so I can use it. There we go. So at 18 years old, I joined the Navy, and my first tour of duty was in Florida, and it was to aircraft, a squadron with airplanes like that. And I'm in the squadron snack bar, and I'm selling hot dogs and Cokes and stuff like that. I've been there 10 days. I'm a know-nothing nugget. I don't know anything about the planes. The commanding officer walked in he was going to go flying, and he had all his flight gear with him. He was going to get some food to go flying, and he said, I asked him what it was like to fly in one. He said, come with me, son, and I'll show you. And he pulled me out of there, and that day, he put me in the flight engineer seat with the instructor in there, and I had no idea they were going to do this. And I'll show you the picture in a minute. But I ended up with over 10,000 flight hours in that aircraft before I was done. And I told them they were going to have to kill me to get me out of the chair, but my hearing got so bad I couldn't fly anymore and wouldn't pass the flight physical, so they didn't have to kill me. But by the time my incident happened, I was stationed in Barbers Point, Hawaii, and I already had about a little over 6 years of aviation and about a little over 3,000, maybe 3,500 hours of flight time under my belt already. And I was qualified flight engineer at 21 years old on that airplane, taking them out by myself for the flight engineer duties. When we had long flights, we'd take 2 engineers, so we'd trade off and get some rest on the flight. So I'm stationed in Florida. The skipper gives me an opportunity to go check that out. I love it, get involved and keep flying. Transfer to Hawaii. I get out there and I become an instructor flight engineer. I'm probably one of the younger ones to ever do that. And we were getting ready for what was called a rim pack exercises, which is the rim of the Pacific. And it's the largest military exercise in the world. They do it every 2 years, and it encompasses dozens of countries, NATO countries working together, and it's typically the whole Pacific is involved. Battleships, you name it, it's out there, they're doing it. And so it was my crew's turn to go fly our mission for that rim pack exercises. We had an airplane that had a history of what's called a chips light on #1 engine. So a little fuzz gets in the metal and making metal. You don't know if it's going to come apart big time or whatever. So you shut the engine down as a precautionary shutdown because you don't know if it's going to have a catastrophic failure. Well, we took off. We're at max allowable takeoff weight. When we get about 10,000 feet, chips light, #1, we have to shut it down. So now we're too heavy. We have too much fuel. Typically, we land with 8,000 pounds of fuel. We still had over 42,000 pounds of fuel when we touched down. So I give you an idea of the difference in weight. When you have a lot more weight, you have to have a lot more airspeed to stay in the air. So we're coming in a lot faster than normal on the approach. Let me go through some of this so you can kind of get a feel for the airplane. Don't do that. So that's the flight station. And I sat, my chair faced forward just like that, and everything on the overhead was mine. You'll get a better picture in a minute. That's at 200 feet off the water. Yeah, that's better, thank you. 200 feet off the water, that's what it looks like in a 30-degree right turn, tracking a submarine. And we'd be down there all day, 6-7 hours at that altitude. And it didn't matter where. I've been 500 miles north of the Arctic Circle in January in the dark at 200 feet with hurricane force winds getting the hell beat out of us, doing our job all day long. And if you ditch up there, you're not going to get any help.
No.
So that's the kind of environment we had to deal with. And I've ended up with basically over 10,000 hours. That's a night vision. That's what it looks like at night. We go to red lighting, so you don't lose your night vision from your eyes when you look outside. All flight stations do that. That'll give you an idea what it really looks like at 200 feet flying over a submarine. These are just kind of things that we did. That was our everyday mission, doing stuff like that. That's when I was stationed up in Whidbey Island in Washington State area. Really loved it up there. That's Deception Pass. I used to drive across that bridge every day going to work. And that's when you're having a bad day at the office. You get 2 engines shut down on the same side. It's typically not a good day. That's the EP3 aircraft version. You see how the tail is cut off on the end. It's not that long stinger, and you got a lot of different things hanging off of it. That's the spy plane version of that airplane, and you have to have a top secret clearance just to walk in that airplane. And at one point in my career, I was the senior instructor flight engineer and model manager for the EP3 aircraft fleet for the Navy. And you can see more stuff hanging off the bottom. You see that big round thing in the nose there underneath it? Right under where the bomb bay is on the other one, that's called Big Look radar. You can see it really, really long way. And of course, that's our patch. In God we trust, all others we monitor. The all-seeing eye in the middle. You got the headphones listening into everything. So,
I love it.
yeah, it's cool. We loved it too. That's the egos that all the engineers had. We thought we could do anything, so. Now that's the runway where it happened. So you can see it's on the left end, the parallel runways there. We were coming in from that angle, from that approach, looking like that right there. So everything was normal coming in for landing. When you have an emergency landing, they place fire trucks, usually 6 of them. 2 at about 2,000 or 3,000 feet down the runway, a few thousand feet more, a couple more, and then a couple more. And as you go by, they will immediately pull in behind you and chase you, so if anything goes wrong, they're right there, right? And that's usually what you want, is to have the emergency vehicles ready to help you as fast as they can in case something goes wrong. Well, we came in for the approach, and you expect a swerve to the right, because you got an engine out on the left, so you got 2 engines pulling harder on the right wing. So you're going to expect more power to pull you off to the right. And we brief that, counter it with the rudder, and stay on center line. You know, we do those trainings all the time. Excuse me. So everything seemed normal when we came in and landed and touched down. Everything was fine. When the nose gear came down, we started going to the right. I kept thinking he's going to correct, and get us back on center line, you know. And the next thing we know, at those speeds, we were doing 135 knots when we touched down. Typically, we landed about 103 or 4 knots. That's 155, almost 158 miles an hour. So when things go wrong at those speeds, it happens in a hurry. So the next thing I knew, we are really going hard off the runway, and all of a sudden I had death coming at me at over 150 miles an hour. There was absolutely nothing I could do about it. I was dead, and I knew it. All I could think about was my son and my family. Still blows my mind how much goes through your mind when you think you've only got a few seconds of life left. It's astonishing how much flashes through your head. And what really is important comes crystal clear right there. And all I wanted to do was hold my son again. He was about 3 years old, not quite 3. That's just...
Yeah.
And in that moment of terror, I was out of the airplane all of a sudden. And I didn't understand what was going on. I'm confused. I'm very confused. I'm not just out of the airplane, I'm still in the airplane. I'm trying to figure out how I can be out of the airplane and in my chair at the same time, and I don't understand what's going on, and we're still headed straight at the fire truck, and I think I'm going to be dead in the next few seconds. It's totally confusing. Somebody's trying to get in over there.
Yes, tell him to go get him.
He's on the other door.
He's in. That's okay.
The other door's locked.
And so, I forget where I was at.
The fire truck is shut
Yeah,
down.
when we came at the fire truck and I was out of my body, I could see everything going on outside the plane. Whatever my attention focused on, and inside the plane too, after we passed, before we got to the fire truck, I thought we were going to slam into it, and I'm out of the airplane. And so the fire truck was set at an angle like that, so then they could pull in behind you. So it's kind of at an angle, and as we went by, our wingtip went over the front left corner of that fire truck. I could see the guy on the water cannon on the top wearing that silver fire suit, right? Big square clear shield on his face. I could see his face. I could see him screaming at the top of his lungs. I couldn't hear him because I'm in the plane and outside the plane somehow. But I couldn't hear him, but I could sure see him screaming in terror. And I remember wondering if he could see me. And I looked the same to him. It just flashed through my head. I still remember that for some reason. And as we came up to that, I could see the propeller blades spinning. This is a 13-foot diameter prop, turns at 1,020 rounds a minute, and weighs 2,200 pounds. And it's moving forward at over 150 miles an hour. And this blade, 2 of the 4 blades, somehow I could see this. The first blade barely missed the front corner of the truck, and the next blade passed behind the front left corner of the truck, while that guy's sitting there screaming, watching all this stuff go by his head. And I can't imagine how freaked out he must have been. I wished I'd gone back and talked to him. I never thought about that. Years later, somebody asked me, did you ever go to talk to the fire crew? I'm like, I didn't even think of that. I was just had all that other stuff going through my head. That never crossed my mind to do that. But that happened, and somehow we missed the fire truck. It was by the grace of God, period, that we didn't slam into that fire truck. And we're going across the asphalt now between the 2 runways at an angle. And we're out of control. And nobody's doing anything to fix the problem. And Mr. Duffy is in the right seat, and he starts saying, get on the brakes. Nothing happens. Get on the brakes, he says it louder. Still nothing happens. I think Mr. Lovegren is still in shock. And he finally yelled, you better get on the effing brakes. And that's when he kind of woke up and started hammering on the brakes, and we stopped on the right runway, on the left side of it, and it's sloped a little bit, runways are, so the rain can drain off. It's to keep it from puddling on the runway. So now when we hit that, our nose gear and right main mount are up on the runway, and the left main mount's off, so we're kind of cocked at an angle, and we finally got stopped. And while we're doing that, as we're going across the runway, or the asphalt between, there's a lot of dirt and debris out there because planes don't go there. You know, the prop blast and engine blast isn't blowing the dirt away. And somehow, I don't know where this Pepsi can came from. I saw this Pepsi can go from left to right, flash across the window. It probably took a split second, right? I could see it. I could see the fluid coming out of it. I could read it, Pepsi,
Oh my God.
12 ounces. I mean, it was all slow motion. I'm like, going right in front of the 3 windows, you know? And then the me outside saw it go across the window, dive down over the nose, and then down and underneath number 3 propeller, and went right between the main mounts and never got touched. I'm like, I saw that. I don't know how I could do that. And all of that's confusing me. And then I started focusing on the debris in the air, and I became, I was there. Wherever there was debris in the air, millions of pieces of debris, little tiny dust particles, whatever it was, if it was in the air, my consciousness was there as they were all swirling around, and I'm trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And last thing I remember, I was sitting in my chair doing my job, you know. And then when we hit that embankment on the other runway, and we felt the lurch and came to a stop, all of this different, I call it fractured consciousness. I don't know what else to call it. I was just all these different places, and they all went back into me in the plane. And I'm like, I'm just trying to figure this out. I'm like, I'm alive, so I'm really happy I'm alive, you know. I can remember feeling good about that. And I look over at Lieutenant Duffy, and I watched him slump, and he came off his adrenaline rush. And he looks at me, and I'm like, did you see? I was trying to, I can't ever, to this day, I still don't know if I actually said something or our minds were talking, because I didn't get a chance to, I said something like, did you see that? And he answered back like, yeah, like, of course I saw that, you know, I had a mindset. And before he could say anything else, Lieutenant Lovegren is on the left, and he's going, whoop, whoop. He's trying to get something out. He's still stressed out. He's in shock, and he's white knuckling the yoke. And so when I was looking at Duffy to my right, we had our eyes locked, and as soon as I heard the whoop sound, I saw Duffy's eyes move over my shoulder, and I turned, and that's right when I was trying to figure out if we actually said something to each other, right? Or did I just transmit it in our heads? I couldn't figure that out. It's still a fuzzy moment. I was pretty shook up right then. And then looked back at Lovegren, and he's trying to get something out. He can't say it. He's whoop, whoop. He finally goes, voice is shaking like the last leaf hanging on a tree in autumn in a high wind, going, what the heck did I do wrong? You know? I'm like, I couldn't believe it. I just looked at Duffy, and then before anybody else could say anything, the next thing I know, all the fire trucks caught up. And by the way, when I was outside the plane, before all the consciousness pulled back into me, I could see all the fire trucks turning to chase us, trying to catch up. I saw all of that. And so now, after Lovegren said that, about the time the fire truck showed up, all of the, we were able to communicate with the radio, with the tower to the truck. We couldn't talk to them directly, but we could communicate with their radio to the tower, and figured out there was nothing wrong with the airplane. So we added power, finished the rollout on a different runway. I literally did a 3-engine emergency landing in a 4-engine heavyweight airplane and used 2 entirely different runways to do that with. 1 landing, 2 runways. I don't want to do that again. So we, where were we? We taxi back to the hangar, and everybody debriefs, and I go home. I go check the flight schedule, and I'm really wanting to go to the base club, you know. That's what I really wanted to do, but I couldn't because the flight schedule had me scheduled to fly first thing in the morning. So crew rest, flight duties, all that. So back then, they didn't. This is 1982, I think. They didn't have. The terminology post-traumatic stress didn't exist back then. And so the next day, I'm on the flight schedule. I don't think anything of it. Never crossed my mind. Get back in the plane. Now the skipper's flying. The commanding officer's in the right seat to check out the pilot that gooned the landing the day before and make sure he's okay. And nowadays, they'll put you through all these, you know, psychiatric tests and all that to make sure you're okay. Back then, they just put you in the saddle to see if you could go ride. And I didn't know it was going to affect me. I'd never heard of that. And so on the first approach, I'm seeing that again from what I happened the day before. And I start having post-traumatic stress. And I couldn't look. Normally, I would sit up in my seat because I have a nice 180-degree commanding view. And my job on approach is if we have a reason to have to wave off, my job is to push the power levers forward and be ready. So I would bend forward and have my hands ready. Let me back that up so you can see the flight station again a little bit, and maybe get a better view of something. I would bend forward. In between, and the pilot on the right seat was the skipper. He was sitting in the right seat. When I did that, he would not be able to see my face. He could just see the back of my head because he's up flying, right? And I'm bent forward when all he could see is my head. I didn't want him to see my face because I knew if he did, he'd know there was something really wrong. And I just couldn't look outside. Could not do it. It took me 3 or 4 landings. I finally had to convince myself, Tony, you got 3,500 flight hours. That's never happened before. It's probably never going to happen again. You got to get your head back in the game, or you're never going to fly again. I loved flying. I wasn't about to give that up. So somehow I got through that flight without the skipper knowing. And that was the first flight happened on a Monday. Refly was a Tuesday. Wednesday, I was at home at night with my wife and son, and we were watching a TV show called That's Incredible. And I know this all sounds kind of unrelated, but it is. And I don't know how this incident on Sunday changed things, but it opened a door somehow for me that I didn't know existed. And a little tired, excuse me. I lost my train of thought, I apologize.
That's incredible.
Yeah, That's Incredible, thank you. So it's Wednesday, we're watching That's Incredible, and they had this guy on there, this woman on there, in her mid-60s, I think, and it was about her son, and she had adopted a baby boy when he was really, really small, and he had no cognitive skills. He had some sort of mental injury or disability in the brain, but he was no more than a baby his whole life in his mind, mentally. Didn't talk, anything. His name was Leslie Lemke, Lemke. You can still find that video on YouTube about it. And she was talking about how she had gotten up in the middle of the night because she heard music downstairs, and she thought somebody left the TV or radio on. She goes downstairs, and here's her son. By the way, before he was born, she had had a spiritual experience that was told she's going to be offered a baby for adoption, and she's to take the one that's blind. Well, he was not only blind, he had the mental disability too. And she adopted him anyway, right? Knowing it was going to be a hard life. So all of his life, she would, as a baby, she had to treat this full-grown man like a baby. Put his hands on her arms and walk him around. She's a tiny little thing. I bet this woman didn't weigh 99 pounds, but she was tough as nails. She was just amazing. And so she said she heard music, and she goes downstairs to turn off the radio, and here's Leslie, who has never spoken, is playing the piano and singing gospel music. And I was blown away. And his voice was just, I call it hauntingly holy voice. It just penetrated my heart, and I knew I was seeing a miracle. I'm thinking I'm seeing my first miracle. I now know everything's a miracle. I didn't know that at 24, so I believe I'm seeing my first miracle. And that night I went to bed just grateful, and I said just a genuine, honest prayer of genuine gratitude to God of letting me see my first miracle. Mm-hmm. And then I added, it was a 10-second prayer, right? In your head. You don't really expect anything's going to happen from a 10-second prayer, especially that night. And I said at the end of the prayer, a little short 10-second prayer, Lord, it'd be nice if you could do something like that for me someday. Careful what you ask for. You just might get it. And the next thing I know, it's dark 30, we called it in the military. I don't know what it was, 3:30, 4 in the morning, pitch black outside, and I didn't go through a tunnel. I didn't any of that kind of thing. It was an instantaneous shift in consciousness. Boom, there I am. I went from a dead sleep to in the black void, looking at the liquid, molten, golden white light that was pouring out energy in all directions. And I said, the power. The first thing that I recognized was the power, was infinite power. But it was under absolutely total, perfect control. With it was as if God was more thrilled that Tony was back, and he's throwing a cosmic scale party, baby, it's Tony, and all the while he's freaking out because Tony's here. He's controlling all this power like, yeah, I got that. That's how, it's effortless. God can control all that effortlessly. And I was just blown away, and I said, the unconditional love, and I cannot stress the word unconditional enough, because I didn't grow up being taught that. I grew up in East Texas, Southern Baptist, you know, fear, fire, brimstone, hell, and all that. And that is not at all what I experienced, not even close. And the love was my best analogy. Let me get to the other part first. The love was blowing me away, and I said 3 words. I said, oh my goodness. I was just in dumbfounded awe. I couldn't even think. You can't think. You can't do anything but experience. And I said, oh my goodness. The instant I said the word goodness, the essence of divine goodness exploded through me, filled me up. And then was joy, bliss, ecstasy, peace, harmony. If it was a positive, good, nothing negative, period. Anything discordant, not there. God is not ever do anything but love all the time, constantly. Totally happy, totally joyous, totally peaceful. The serenity, the quiet, the divine silence. We think about being quiet, we have silence, we go in a room. It's not really ever truly silent. You still can hear your heartbeat. You can hear your breath. You can hear something. Not there. That was the perfect meditation room. Everything is perfected there. And you can feel it. You become one with it. And it is just mind-blowing. And I had this moment, I call it the urge to merge, where all you care about, I had a wife next to me in bed, I had a 2.5-year-old in the next room, and I didn't even think about them. And I know that sounds terrible, but you just can't. You're so overwhelmed with all of the energy, and each one of these emotions that were coming from God's heart to express to me how precious I was and how loved I was, excuse me, were very specific and unmistakable. I knew what goodness is. I knew what extreme joy and ecstasy and peace and harmony and all those things and love, they all had their own frequency, I guess, is one way to call it. Bless you. And it was unmistakable what each one was for. And the benevolence was equally infinite. And so that's why I know we are always going to be protected, loved. Nobody gets thrown away. I don't care who you are or what you've done. That's my belief, because I was there. And I'm not perfect. I've hurt people. I've made mistakes. And but God loves you anyway. Doesn't care. But we're going through some sort of process of perfection, so that we end up ascending and staying there. So we don't have to keep doing this. This stuff's hard, you know. But it was when I was having that urge to merge. All that was in front of me was all this light. I didn't have the bedroom or anything. I didn't see anything, right? And then all of a sudden I see some hands out like this from the peripheral. You know, I'm still focused on the light, because that's all you want to look at. But I saw these hands, just like, I remember, why are these hands there? And then the rest of the room started coming into view in the bedroom. And those were my hands. I had sat up in bed, and I had my arms up. I was wanting to go home. I was home, and I knew it. There's a sense of being home like you will never have here. It was total home, and I didn't want to leave. I wasn't happy that I didn't get to stay. And I wasn't told why. No words were spoken to me. I was just left with trying to figure it out. And while I'm sitting there, I remember it was like a billion stars in the bedroom. couldn't believe how bright it was, and my wife was, I could see her feet, the position of her feet let me know that her back was to me. And I remember thinking, how could she sleep through this? There's a billion stars in the room, and she's dead asleep. I was like, and then that's when it struck me. This is real. I'm sitting in bed, and there's no wall at the end of the room. The light is coming in. I got God in my bedroom, and my wife's asleep. You know, like, this is real. As soon as I recognized it was real, God knew I knew it was real, because I'm an engineer, right? I am you got to prove it to me, and I will tear it apart bit by bit till I find the truth. And you better make it darn right, because if it isn't, I'm going to make sure you know about it. Because I'll pick it apart until I figure out if that's truth or not. I don't care how long it takes. I'm relentless in doing that. It took me decades to get where I'm at now after that experience to figure a lot of things out. But I'm relentless about it. And
Wow.
That urge to merge was the most beautiful moment I'll ever know. And then the light went away, and there was like a 10-foot circle in the room where the whole end of the room was not there. The wall was gone, okay, at the foot of the bed across the room. And I'm just sitting there crying. Didn't know I was crying at first. And then the light, just not instantly, but it kind of went about that speed, about 2, maybe 3 seconds, and it just went away. And
Yeah.
I just had the greatest love I'll ever know ripped away from me.
Yep.
And I didn't know why I didn't get to stay. I wasn't told anything. And I sat there begging it to come back, and there was this residual energy in the wall still, like a undulating, almost there, almost not, but I knew it was there, and I'm crying and praying for the light to come back, because that's all I had left. And it didn't. And then my wife wakes up, as the sun came up, that gradually faded away as the room got brighter from the sunlight outside. And my wife wakes up and she's like, "What's wrong with you?" I didn't know how to explain it. And I finally did, and I think she believed me. She did believe me. But the following Sunday, I needed answers. All right, I needed answers, and I'm not the kind of guy that waits around for them. I'm going to go find them. And so I'm thinking, I'm going to go to somebody at the church. They'll tell me what happened. Right? I was 24. I didn't know anything. I thought that's where you get your answers, right? That's what I grew up being told. Let's go talk to somebody at church. And did that, and the pastor, it was a Waianae Baptist church on the west end of the island, and he was on vacation, and they had a guest pastor there that week. And so I went up to him after the sermon was all over, and just he and I by ourselves in a different room, and told him what happened. I was crying. It took me a long time to get through the story without losing it emotionally, because the energy would come back and just overwhelm me. And he just turned his back on me, walked away. And I'm like, I'm done, that's twice I got crushed in a week.
Wow.
When the light went away and I didn't get told anything, and then he didn't tell me anything. So I walked off crying, and I got mad about it because I took offense, because I was a kid, you may be an adult doing adult things, but at that age you still don't know much. And I took offense and got mad and walked away. But the week later after that, we went to a different church. I was still trying to find answers from somebody at another church, and this was a bigger church. Much bigger, it had a lot more people, and it was closer to the base, so there was a lot of military people in there. So this is when my wife let me know I'm not supposed to talk about it, but I didn't let her stop me. And because she didn't want people to think her husband's crazy, I'm sure of it. And I remember this is back in 1982, you know, a whole lot of people talking about this stuff back then. And so she knew what I was going to do. And I'm trying to stand up you know, and I got my hand up, the pastor would call, you know, it's open talk, right? And raise your hand if you got something you want to say, something, the whole congregation's there. And as I'm trying to stand up, she grabs my arm, and I'm like, I mean, she's pulling hard. And I finally went, let go of me. You know, I had to do that in front of everybody. And then I said something, I can't remember my question, but I was trying to get an answer about what happened to me. And he gave me some pastoral answer that was, I don't know, it just, immediately I knew he didn't know anything. So I just sat back down. And then after that, we're out in the parking lot, we're getting ready to leave. This lieutenant commander that I'd seen on the base a couple of times came up to me and said he knew I was an aviator because he'd seen me in flight suit plenty of times, probably on the base at the ramp or whatever, flight ramp, and he was probably in one of the other squadrons, I think. And he told me that's probably not a good idea to keep talking about that stuff if you want to keep flying, or you're going to lose your security clearance. So in 1 week, I got turned away by the church twice, my wife, and basically told by, you know, commanding military officer to shut up about it. So that's what I did. I turned away from all of that and walked off and just focused on my military career and couldn't really do anything about it. I didn't know what to do. But I tell you what, shutting up about it doesn't work either. Because once God switches you on, that's it, you're on. And you're going to have to go find out now more about who and what you truly are. You just can't forget it. And so that ended up lots of problems, you know, psychological problems, emotional problems affected me and my marriage, and we ended up getting a divorce and just all kinds of problems in my life until I started going back and seeking truth and trying to get answers. But a lot of that didn't happen until over 20 years later. And so one of the things I'm focused on right now, and it's what we're doing at the IANDS conference in Philadelphia this year, is the focus is on helping veterans who have had these experiences and are not being validated from the beginning. It does tremendous moral injury to someone when they are invalidated and told, oh, you had a psychotic event, or you need medication, or no, that didn't really happen, this happened, or you need to shut up about it. Those things don't work, and they end up causing a lot of problems for people. So with Diane Corcoran, who was the former president of IANDS, I think she's about to be the president again, is that right? Not knowing who she was, I decided I was going to get out there and talk more, and ended up getting invited down to the IANDS meeting down in Virginia Beach. And over time, somehow Diane heard about me, and she's involved in what we call the gap in care for veterans. And it's not just veterans, we're trying to get this information out there for all of the healthcare community, especially the frontline providers, because they're the first ones that can have an opportunity to either validate or not someone having had an experience, especially in an ER or something like that. And she's trying to educate that community about the gap in care, and they created a video. I don't know if I have it in my bag, I left it in the room. It's called Understanding Veterans' Near-Death Experiences. And I'm one of the veterans in it, and there's 3 others, I think. Suzanne Giesman is in it. She's a retired Navy commander. She used to be the commanding officer. She had her own command and was a commanding officer, and was the personal aide for the Chief of Naval Operations, and then later became the personal aide for the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and flew on Air Force One with President George W. Bush. Today, she's a full-time evidential medium. Went to right.
I've been to her, she's good.
I know her as well.
In the villages.
I'm sorry?
She's in the villages in Florida.
Not now, she moved.
Just recently.
Just recently.
Just recently.
Yeah. And so those are the kind of people that are coming forward now and saying, you know, you need to, the healthcare community, the rest of the world really needs to wake up and pay attention to these kind of experiences because they have meaning. They definitely have meaning to the people that have had them, and they need help understanding more about what happened rather than being told they're psychotic or crazy or no, that wasn't real, it was just in your head, oh, it was lack of oxygen, Well, guess what? I was sitting in the center seat of an airplane doing my job. I wasn't out of oxygen, I wasn't unconscious, I wasn't any of that stuff. I was doing my job, you know? So that makes it hard for them to repudiate those kind of things. And more people are coming out about it, and it's beautiful. It needs to happen a lot more. But that's what I'm up to, that's what I'm doing. My sole focus is helping veterans and trying to get the VA to pay attention, but they don't do that. Yes?
When you talk about the accident and then you flew the next day, you talked about having post-traumatic stress. What about the pilot who went through that? Was he able to continue on with this?
Yeah, we all kept being on the same crew, and you know, once we got through that one flight, I guess the skipper thought we were okay, and he let it go. You know, but again, they would never do those things today. There's going to be a whole lot more, you know, interaction to find out if people are okay mentally. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well,
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, you know, the 20 years since you've had the experience, you know, you've been working through this, you know, learning.
Have I had any more experiences?
Well, no, how has your idea of who you are changed? What, you know, what have you evolved to that gives you a sense maybe of peace or understanding or?
Well, I've had more things happen since that, okay? 2017, I started reading, a lady named Lilia found my video online, and she got in touch with me to tell me about something called the St. Germain Foundation, and I'd never heard of them. And she starts telling me how these books are explaining how the energy works, because it was all energy when I was there, it was pure energy. And I'd never heard these kind of things before about describing how we receive God's energy and what it's doing and how we can use it and how we're requalifying it, making it imperfect, and then we have our problems in our life rather than relying on our God to flow through us. And remember that effortlessness I was talking about before? You know. Oh, I meant to tell you one other thing about the love, my analogy on God's love, that's what I've been able to come up with on what it felt like and why we are all that precious. And it felt like this sense of feeling that I was precious to God was clearly there. And unique energy of letting me know how special I am as an individual to God. And the preciousness. And it felt as if I was that precious because I was going to be the last newborn baby at the end of the history of the life of the entire universe. And I was being loved, held, and cradled by every mother in every galaxy, everywhere that ever lived, every when, all at once. And that analogy sucks. I mean, I could talk like that 24 hours a day for 1 billion years straight, and I still won't scratch the surface of what that reality is truly like there. You just can't. That's why it's ineffable. It just is. And anybody here that's had the experience knows what I'm talking about. Yes.
Could you go back on your consciousness when this was happening? You said you were sort of outside your consciousness.
Yeah, I was in more than one place.
Yeah. Did you feel like you had two consciousness?
No, I was all still me, but the difference was the consciousness in the seat, me in the flight engineer seat, was terrified. Okay? Raw terror, like I'd never known before. Now, I've been upside down on purpose in a 4-engine heavyweight airplane doing defense air combat maneuvers. There's not a whole lot that scares me. That did. But the difference is the me outside the plane was perfectly calm, just observing. No emotions one way or the other about what was happening, just observing, being, and experiencing.
So you were seeing two different things?
And feeling two different things at the same time.
That's interesting.
Did you feel pressure on your body at the time?
Not in the plane,
Outside?
no,
Nowhere?
no. But bringing that word up, I know what you're going to say, the pressure of the light when it fills you up. 2017, I was about to go there a minute ago, right? I get regular massages because I live with chronic pain from my injuries and all the stuff I did in the military. And my massage therapist was 6 or 7 months pregnant at the time, and she knew she was going to have a baby boy. And his name was going to be Noah. So I had known her for a couple of years, and we both became friends, and we talk about different stuff going on in our lives. And so she was sharing me with some of the stuff that she's anxious about, and I was sharing some of the anxieties I was anxious about because I was struggling with stuff going on with the VA again. And she's working on my left hip, and I'm on my back, right? So I'm trying to talk to her as I got my head raised up so I could look at her, and her eyes were locked. And I was telling her about the books I was telling you about. And I read everything I could about all religions, you name it. If it had an ism behind it, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, Sufism, if it had an ism behind it, I looked it up and learned about it. And kind of moved on from those ideas, and I said, okay, how can I be here in this world physically? So I started learning all I could about nature and the earth and how this all came in from subatomic particles popping in and out of existence and somehow turning into atoms that somehow turn into molecules that somehow turn into cells, living cells that somehow turn into me. If that's not a miracle, I don't know what is. You know, and then everything else between, after that, the evolution of our whole universe. From, anybody here know what Planck time is? Max Planck is a physicist that came up with Planck time, P-L-A-N-C-K, or P-L-A-N, I can't remember how he spells his name. But his idea was he took the first second that the universe existed and split that second up in 1 billion pieces. So 1/1000th of a second is 1 Planck time. And then he explained what was happening in the universe as the different energies and forces unfolded and became what we see today. And so I learned all that, and how everything became what it is today from light. And I was in the light. When I was there, that's all there was light. So God used light to make everything with. That's why everything radiates slowly as it gives off its. That's why we have infrared, right? That's why everything radiates and deteriorates over time. In the universe, it'll all do that. Eventually, it's all going to evaporate. That's what scientists and physicists say. So, nobody can tell you where those subatomic particles come from, or what happens when the matter crosses into the event horizon of a supermassive black hole. What's on the other side? Nobody can tell you what that is. 96% of the universe, we don't even know what it is. It's dark matter, dark energy. They call it that because they don't know what it really is. Only 4% of the universe is observable. There's so much we don't know. And somehow God made it all from light, and I knew that. So that was my foundation. I know I know what the truth is because I was there. So that was always my standard. And
Massage?
yeah, so I'm laying on my back, and that energy you're talking about, and I'm telling her about the liquid molten golden white light that I was reading about in these books. And that's the first time in 30 years that I ever read anything anywhere that described the light exactly like I saw it when I was there. I've never seen it called liquid molten, or everybody says the white light. It was golden white, and there was some blue in the center. So the liquid, I said that to her, and I was excited about it, and I said, it said the liquid molten golden white light, and as soon as I said the word light, that energy of peace, because we were both feeling anxious, divine peace specifically was what it was, roared through me, blasted through me, cut my voice off. It was going on for almost a minute straight. All I could do was drop my head back on the table, and I'm crying the whole time. Her hands are on my hips and not moving. She's not moving. Neither one of us could move. Neither one of us could talk. We were overcome with spiritual power that was ripping through my body with immense pressure but it felt wonderful.
Good.
And then when it stopped, I'm like, I wipe my eyes off and I'll raise my head up and I look at her and she's got tears and her eyes are like huge. And I'm like, I said to her, her name's Rosalind, I said, did you feel that? And she goes, uh-huh. And Noah did too. That's still happening and to me. And then I've been through a lot of stuff lately with VA problems. Like I said, I deal with a lot of pain, and they've been just horrendous about cutting care off for people. And all I'm asking for is acupuncture, massage therapy, and chiropractic care. I'm not asking for anything else. And they won't. 31 days after I'd been in a car accident, the chief of staff of the hospital thought it'd be okay to cut my care off. And it got really bad and ugly, and I was really hurt. And now there's an FBI investigation going on, because I documented everything meticulously. And they had done this kind of thing to me before, back in 2010. So I said, okay, I'm going to be ready for you guys this time. If you do it to me again, I'm going to make darn sure you don't do it to anybody else. Because I had reported it back then, and they covered it up and went through the VA OIG, Office of Inspector General, and they came back with a report, and it was totally lies. And I went, the whole system's corrupt, and I knew it. And I said, if you do it to me again, I'm going to make sure God's going to make you pay for it, and I'm going to be ready for it. And I was ready. And then I had a car accident that totaled my car and another car. I was sitting at a red light and it got slammed into my front left fender. And that hurt a lot. And 31 days after that, he cut my care off. And it got really, really bad. And I'm not going to get into the details of it, but it ended up with me meeting with FBI agents to talk about it. So I told them I was going to come in my flight suit because I wanted to know who I am. And there was another reason, I'm not going to get into it, but they understood and they were fine with that. So it was two women, probably in their mid-40s, that were the agents. And when I got there, I'm in my flight suit, right? I got zippers everywhere. I mean, there's like a dozen zippers. I've got metal in here. I had this stuff in my pocket. These dog tags.
Yeah.
This big metal coin that my buddy gave me that's sentimental to me. These boots are steel-toed flight boots. They got eyelets that are all made out of metal. I say all that for a reason. And my name, my metal wings, Chief Petty Officer anchor on my hat, right? Got all this metal on me. And they tell me I've got to go through their metal detector, their protocol, right? And before I went there, I asked God to give me a sign so that I would know I could bring up the spiritual things that have happened to me and the reasons why God put me in this position to expose all of this stuff. And I'm the relentless warrior that would never give up, ever. And I didn't. I almost did, and came close to bringing their whole building down. That's how bad they hurt me. And I had to threaten them with that before they got my care back. That's how screwed up they are. But that's another story. But anyway, I walked in, they told me I had to go through the metal detector. So I walked through it, and as I walked through, nothing happened, and I turned around, and they're off to my left, right? I'm walking toward them, and I turned around to look at the machine, waiting for it to go off. I thought maybe I had a delay or something, and it didn't. And then I turned around and looked at them, and they're both, you know,
Wow.
and I'm like, you want me to go through it again? Oh, no, I didn't do that. At that time, they kind of looked at me, and then they looked at each other, and one says to the other, is it on? Meaning, is the machine turned on? And she goes, I think it is. And then she kind of got an idea. She goes, how you hop when you have an idea? She did that. She goes, oh. And she turned and walked on her own to go through the machine. And it didn't make us, and it went off on her. I had 30 times more metal on me than she did. She's in regular street clothes. I knew I had my sign. I said, I can tell you guys the truth now. And I let them have that. I told them everything. Told them about my experience. Told them what God's love is like. Told them why these people are, that the light never fails and they're all going to be held accountable. And that God sent me because He knows I'm a relentless warrior and I don't ever give up. And it took me almost a decade of profiling these people to nail them. But that was with a lot of God's help. I don't take the credit. I just kept showing up to the fight, doing what God expected of me, trying to do the next right thing. And if you keep doing that, and you keep loving them anyway, even though they're hurting you, because it's ridiculous to hate or be angry at anyone after you've been in the light. Because you flat out know you're all one anyway. We are all one. There's no such thing as separation. It just isn't. And so for me to hate someone or be angry at someone is the equivalent of being angry at myself or God too. Because God's, that mighty I am presence, the I am that I am, exists within each and every one of us. And if I'm being angry, disrespectful, whatever to an individual, it's the same thing as doing it to God, in my opinion. Because we are all of us have some divinity within us. And that's what we're here to learn to connect with and become more of, is to accept and learn that what that divinity is all about. And what I believe it's about is we are all being drawn up into perfection. Everything is. This isn't what God intended. I know that these kind of things that are happening in the world, none of that's allowed in the presence of that Creator. Those are discordant energies that are all humankind and mankind created trash. All of it. And none of it's allowed in the presence of the Creator. Somehow I was. It seemed like a moment, and it seemed like forever. There's a time, I don't know how to explain what a place of spaceless space and timeless time feels like and looks like, but somebody had their hand up back there?
I did. We're very grateful to have this type of support group here, and I'm wondering if you have one close to you that you attend?
Not actually close. It's about an hour and 15 minutes away, hour and 20. It's the Boston IANDS group down in, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the town, south of Boston, just off of 95, I think. I just can't remember the name of the town right now.
Yeah, we've had speakers from there.
Yeah.
Here.
But there's nothing in New Hampshire or Maine that I'm aware of. Closest one I know of is Boston. Yes?
Is the video you mentioned about the veterans having near-death experiences, is that available for sale?
Yes, it is. You can go to IANDS website and
IANDS?
IANDS, or go to NDEvideo.com. NDEvideo.com. That's where the trailer for it is, and I think there's a link on there that will send you to where you can buy it. But you can also find it on IANDS website to look around for it.
Could you spell IANDS again?
IANDS. I tell people it's like you take the two words, the word is and the word and. Take the word is, separate the letters, the I and the S, and stick the word and in the middle. IANDS.org. Yes?
You mentioned Saint Germain Foundation, you were referring,
Yeah.
like the books, what is that? What is that all about?
It's about Saint Germain, from what I've been learning, since Lily had introduced this to me, is a ascended master, just like Christ is, Jesus is, and a lot of others, Buddha, whoever. They're all ascended masters, and what we're doing here, and what I've learned from these books, is that we are trying to achieve our own ascension too. And we've been here for many, many lifetimes. We keep making some of the same mistakes over and over again. And once we get to it, we build up spiritual momentum. And one of the things I've learned too is people that have a lot of momentum built up tend to have a lot more challenges in life. Because what my understanding is that my consciousness is the transmitter, right? It's the one that puts out the power, the energy that goes out to the universe, and it's going to come back to me. So I'm requalifying the energy God puts into me through my heart. Every heartbeat I have is because of God's energy being fed to me from a tube of light that we all have that's God-sourced energy. And it's perfect when it gets to us. But we requalify it with our imperfect human thoughts. And when we do that, it creates an energy that comes back to us, and we end up having to deal with the consequences of the love lessons that come from that. And what it all is, this whole thing is love lessons. This is a training ground to teach us how to have our consciousness in tune with the same octave of energy of existence that I went to when God and be in the presence of my Creator all the time. And I don't ever have to not do that. And believe me, when I was there, I instantly knew I was in the presence of my Creator. You can't not know that when you're there. You just not, that's just a flat out no, you know. Yeah.
I just want to say that there is a St. Germain Center in Connecticut in East Hartford. It's a very beautiful building, a lot of icons and all that. I've gone to some classes over there. And they have a bookstore where you can buy books, there's over 30 books, the green books.
Yeah,
and all that.
exactly. I have them all, I have them too. And they're just beautifully written. And the only books that I've ever read that describe the energy, it talks about the energy, you know? And so I'd never heard that before or expressed that way anywhere. It talks about the other ascended masters and how they all work together in harmony. And there is no ascended master greater than the other. And I know there's a lot of mankind that wants to put one deity or over another, but in that dimension, there is no, there's only one that's greater than all. That's just God. And the rest of us are trying to achieve the same thing that our ascended masters, the other ascended masters have done already. And as we build energy, according to what I'm learning, more and more things will begin to happen. That's happening to me. And as these things occur, and as I build more energy, according to the books, when I hit just over the 50% mark, you don't have to do this all by yourself. As we connect and keep telling God how much we love God and connect with the ascended masters and let them know how we feel, the feelings. This is a feeling universe. It's all based on emotional feelings and whether they're harmonized with God's feelings, which are perfected already. So we're trying to do that, but when we reach a certain level, we get the rest of the help we need, and boom, you are brought into the dominion of God's existence, and you have become a part of that, where you are allowed to have creative abilities with these powers and this energy that's our birthright. But with great power comes great responsibility. And until we're trained to learn how to use that power for the greater good and for the purposes of constructive, kind, loving purposes and God's agenda only, and not our self-serving reasons of ego, the only battle I've ever had, my whole eons of life I've ever had, is with my ego. Because I put my ego ahead of God. If I didn't, I wouldn't be here in the first place. That's how I see it. Yeah.
Tony, you referred to being in the presence of God. I have two questions.
Yes.
One, how did you communicate? And two, how did you perceive him?
It was pure light, a being of light. There was no him or her.
There was no him or her.
It was just love. It was a being of love and light. There was no speaking, no words, no anything like that. But there was there was definitely communication going on of letting me know with feelings what God felt about me. No words, no thoughts, other than my oh my goodness thoughts. It was perfect silence. Perfect. No sound whatsoever.
Could you?
And the light was gracefully moving, spraying out, spreading out, just beautiful. I've seen the most beautiful thing in existence. I was looking right at it. And it's hard to explain what that looks like.
I have another question. It had to do with the liquid
Molten golden white light.
molten white light.
That's what I was talking about. The light itself looked fluid from the center. And then as it peeled off, it had super sharp, scintillating edges to it that were just gigantic and probably the sharpest thing ever. I don't know, but I couldn't believe how so perfect the movement was and the flow, and everything just seemed so effortless. It is effortless there. There's no effort required, just thought. I don't know. I wish I had more to tell you. It's hard to explain.
The molten energy, what color was it?
It was all mostly gold and white. The white was more in the middle, and then as it poured off of that, it was gold spreading out. And in the center were these cerulean blue color, and it was almost like kept changing shapes. They were more than three-dimensional too, and I don't know how to explain that. But they looked like geometric shapes, so they would have a shape and then change to something else, just long enough to see it for a split second, and then change, and then change, and then change. And I never got to lock in on one of them to really see what it was, but I don't know what else to I was just observing and trying to take it all in as much as I could. There's no thinking. You just can't. Anybody else been in that light that had, where your consciousness was totally, you can't think, right?
Wow.
You guys know what I'm talking about.
Wow.
Yeah.
In your fight with the FBI, did you go to them, or were they already?
No, I have a fight with the FBI.
No, not fight with the Veteran Administration.
Oh, yeah.
Did you go to the FBI, or were they already doing a?
No, I had to go to them.
You went to them. I was curious, did you think, or did you try going to your legislator, your federal?
Oh yeah, I did all that.
They didn't
That stuff
help?
doesn't work.
What about the IG at the Veteran Administration?
I gave them all my evidence,
And nothing happened?
and they came back and said, we don't know what you're talking about. What investigation?
Really?
Yeah. So I went to the Office of Accountability and Whistleblower Protection, the Office of Inspector General, the Office of Medical Investigators.
Do you know?
They're all three VA self-investigative entities, and I proved they're all liars. So it's time to clean all this mess up. You know, my dad was World War II, he's deceased now. I did 22 years. My son's a retired gunnery sergeant, Marine Corps, combat Marine, and my grandson's active duty Marine Corps on deployment right now on a light attack vehicle with a three-man crew. He will see combat. And so I'm not going to let these people keep going after me and my family and all the other brothers and sisters and the veterans that I love, and my country too.
Now, in talking to other veterans, do they have a similar problem, or?
Oh yeah, it's all over the place.
All over the place?
Tell you what, you want to start learning how bad it is? Go to a website a Facebook page called VA is Lying, and just start reading. I tell you what, that's a different subject, it's not really on topic, but yeah, go ahead.
What is the title of the book that you read describing those energies that you said most?
They're called the I Am Discourses. Go to stgermainfoundation.org.
Oh.
Now, Germain is spelled without an E. There's no E at the end. Germain. And on there, there's a lot of stuff on there, but look for the series books. It says something about the word series. And there'll be, I think, 22 or 20 books or something like that. I can't remember how many of them there are.
I think it's close to 30 books now.
And they have a bunch of little decree booklets. So you can I do my decrees every day in the morning and at night and during the day when I need to. And I literally, when they were hurting me in the VA after I had the car accident, before anybody else got involved, and I'm really being tortured, and I imagined that I had Archangel Michael's sword of blue flame in my hand. I'm decreeing, I'm swinging this sword in my hand over my head, and I'm telling God, the mighty I Am presence, to take all of the discordant energy from anyone in the VA that is harming me and have it burn back to them as if it were a line of gunpowder, and then it blows up in their faces. So the things that are coming out now and what it's, the depth that it's going to reach and the number of people that are in trouble is going to be astonishing. So I think I lit a spiritual fuse that God's nowhere near done burning yet. And it's going to burn deep. And that's their problem. Yes?
I have a simple question. How were you aware of returning from the outside of the plane? Were you aware of coming back and uniting with the body?
Not as a single, like the one me, when it was just me and the spirit me outside,
Yes.
and the me in the seat. Once it fractured and became all these other places, it just all came in at once from everywhere. There was no just me outside anymore, if that makes sense.
And what were the other places?
Just all the different pieces of debris that were in the air.
Oh.
If it were a piece of dirt, of anything, a grass blade, if it got put up in the air, I was there.
Okay, so that was the other one.
And I was very confused. That's not something you do every day, you know? So, yeah,
You
I'm sorry.
made some statement that ended with, and those people seem to have the most trouble. Do you remember that? What does
Yeah,
that mean?
that the more, the closer we get to our ascension, the more, the books talk about a sinister force, which is really mankind's, what we have created. And we're very vicious creatures, can be. And so all of that energy is nothing at all what God intended. And that mankind took that energy that was perfected and requalified it into something that isn't. And now we have to deal with the consequences of that. That God has love lessons to help get us back on track. And that's my understanding of how it works.
So it's like these people are into this.
And the closer we, as my understanding is, the closer we get to our ascension and the more spiritual we become, the more that ego or the sinister force does not want any of us to, because it'll be done forever, okay? That ego's gone forever if that happens, and once we become totally in the dominion of God and we're working as one with God consciously all the time. That's the last thing ego wants, because then it's destroyed. That's not your self of the I am in you that thinks and all that. That's the ego side that doesn't want to do the right thing and always makes mistakes. And once we are brought into that dominion of purification, we won't ever make a mistake again. And we will have the access to that power. You know, the old saying like the movies, the force is in you. Force to be with you. It is. It really is.
Are you saying that your ego is preventing you?
Yes.
From, okay.
And our ego is what turned us away from God, and we turned our backs, and that's why we're not in the light anymore. It's nobody else's fault but our own. Nobody else turned away but us. And the instant we did that, thinking that there was something better out there, and that set us on the trajectory of eons of going through lifetimes to try and figure out how to get back.
So they're sending masters of all.
They've done this process. They've all been through this before. They already know what we're experiencing, and they know what we need to do to get there. So there's nothing that we need to do that they don't know.
So they differ than us, and they have overcome their ego.
Yeah, to a certain respect, but it's more than that. But it's that's the basic root of it. Yeah, you got to get past that, and to do God's bidding, not my own.
Why do we go through multiple lives? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Through this journey of yours, since this first happened, have you ever become aware of the Akashic records?
Not in my, you mean from a spiritual perspective and having connected with that? No, I did not. Other than when I was in the light, I was one with everything. Just everything.
So have you been curious about it?
Yeah, I know what they are.
Okay.
That's probably where all your lifetimes are recorded. And in time, when we, part of what's going on, all of this discordant stuff, once we ascend, all of the stuff that we ever did that was a mistake is literally wiped out as if it never existed. God can do that.
There are no mistakes. That's my experience. Everything is experience.
Right. To lead us toward the ascension so we don't have to make mistakes anymore. We can stay in the love and the light all the time. Yeah.
No,
That's my belief anyway.
I'm sorry.
You, yeah.
Yes, Tony to Tony. I was reading this morning, and it's serendipity, I guess. I was reading about the Eleusinian mysteries, which were established about 800 BC. And they were talking about exactly what you're presenting to us. That if you could, you went through a sort of initiation, and some of it talks about being confronted with a blinding light. And then you are one of the, and literally it's a play on words, enlightened.
Yeah.
And that if you can go through 3 lifetimes consecutively of being enlightened, then you have no longer the reason to have to come back again. And you will ascend and stay in that light. And I just find it amazing that how many, that's 2,800 years ago.
Here I am talking about it.
They had the idea of
Yeah.
this same kind of thing. So
Well, this is eternal, so that doesn't surprise me. These are principles that are eternal.
yeah,
They don't change.
yeah.
That's the one thing about God.
Yeah,
God's never going to change.
but it's amazing
Not one
that,
bit.
that we've known about it, and it's actually been written down
Yeah.
for so long, and we're still struggling.
The problem, sir, is that people are not accepting the fact that there is divinity within them, and they need to go learn about that part of them that is eternal. And they don't believe that they are eternal beings. They hear it, but when you really believe it,
Yeah.
that's when stuff starts. Because then God knows you know about God, and God knows you care, and God knows you believe. And when you don't get any, the light and the energy, the ascended masters, none of them will ever interfere with our lives until we invite them in. Spirit will never interfere with anyone's life unless they are asked first to come help and to enter into my life and to make a difference. Until we do that, God's never going to do anything because you're not letting Him. It's that simple. It's got to be a two-way door, not a one-way door. And we have to be the one that opens the door first. I've always believed, because I grew up being taught that, but it's what I've always believed in God, in other words. So I never had a problem with that. It was that I wasn't talking to God, and I wasn't telling God I love God. And I do that every day now. And when I do that, I have this flash of just feels so good. It goes through my whole body, just waves of tender, I don't know, I still can't put that into words either. Anybody here meditate that has that energy go through them? You know what I'm talking about? And I love that. I'm sorry?
Best way to say it is love.
Love, but it has this tingling effect.
Energy.
Yeah, and you know it's happening. And it's just about 3 weeks ago, I'm telling I'm at a new massage place, right? And this massage, I keep getting connected with people that, especially massage therapists, they're very spiritual people. They tend to be, because they know about energy and all that, so that tends to go with the flow of their business line. More massage therapists. The massage therapists are usually more spiritual than a lot of other people that that's been my experience anyway. And they just, I was talking to her about it, and I was talking about St. Germain, And she said, every time I had my face down, you know, I'm in the face cradle, right? So I have my eyes shut, I can't see anything. And she's telling me that every time I start talking about God, the lights keep going up and down in the room. I'm like, really? And she goes, yeah, because I couldn't see, you know. And I said, well, what's this? And I said, St. Germain, bring the lights up really bright. And it went, whoa! And went back down. She's like, oh my God. They're real. These beings are real. They're here. They know everything, and they hear everything. And it's just, that's how it works.
You can't see it, but
You're affecting
the screen is going
on and on.
Really?
It's going on and on, changing pictures.
Screen.
It went to a blue screen,
Went to
then
blue
it
screen
went
and now this
blank.
has just come back.
I didn't even see
As you
that.
recognized it.
Yeah.
Wow. It's all the time. I cannot wear a watch, by the way, because I kill them, and within a week they're dead.
Yes.
I didn't know this, but like the second or third time I ever spoke, I got invited back down to Virginia Beach. And my son was stationed in North Carolina in the Marines. So he came up, because he'd never heard me speak, so he came up to see the event. And I was telling about, you know, the energy, and I can't wear a watch anymore. And he goes, yeah, I can't wear one either. I went, oh, I know why. He goes, really, why? I said, you remember when I said the wall was gone when I was in my bedroom, and, right? Your baby bed was on the other side of that wall. And you were in the light too, you just don't remember it. And that's why you can't wear a watch either. He's like, oh, okay. So, yes.
Tony, when you were in that liquid molten black night,
Liquid molten golden white light, yeah.
were there other beings present in that environment?
I did not, there probably were, but my focus was solely on that light. That's all you care about. I mean, it's too beautiful, you're mesmerized. You can't think about anything else, or you could care less if there's anybody else there. Even if they were, you wouldn't want to look at them. That's all you wanted. You know, God is all, that's the most important thing.
Were there any visible orbs in that?
Oh, it was not just orbs, it was huge. It was cosmic scale size, okay? This was gigantic. Beyond its description of size. I can't even put it into words. I just don't know how to do it. It's been 30-something years, I still can't explain it.
So you're saying that it was one great orb?
Yeah, it was pouring out in all directions. It was a center to it. It was hanging in a black void, and it was alive, and it was pouring out energy and telling me how much I was loved and how precious I am, and without words.
So that was what that represented God?
Not just the light, but the energy and the power and the feelings, all of that was all perfect. And I knew it. You can't not know that when you're there. And I don't know how else to say it. Yes. Kim is your name?
Sue.
Sue?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a three-letter word.
Yeah. The light you describe reminds me of in the book Destiny of Souls. The hypnotist hypnotized over 7,000 clients into the in-between lives, and some newer souls so he wanted to discover how the souls are generated. He puts people in that state, especially people who have only a few incarnations on Earth. Their memory of the light is fresher, so they went to the creation process in a huge room with a light, kind of like you described. It's a
I was at the source of all things and everything. That's definitely the source. So I know what you're saying.
Yeah, so the light pulses, and every time it
pulses. Yeah.
Yeah, it has bulges coming out, become a
peel
separate.
Off.
Yeah. And the individual light comes out, becomes individual souls.
Yes.
That's how they were born.
And as it came off in the distance away from the main body of the light, it would be it was like
Little droplets.
embers coming off of a fire, but they were prettier than that, a lot more beautiful, but that was the idea. You had this big conflagration of light, and then these little embers coming off, all going out in their own direction, doing whatever they're doing.
So every time it has.
And I got the sense that I was one of those
feel like that.
pieces of light too, out with the rest of them, looking back.
So it's like the source energy. Every time it passes, it reconfigures. So every soul is different. Every soul energy is different.
Unique.
Yeah, unique. That reminds me of that source energy, the light you described.
It's kind of like the universe is like a tapestry of life. And it's a huge cosmic scale tapestry, right? And on one side, it's perfect. It needs nothing. But we're all in that tapestry. On the back side of that tapestry, it's a mess. There's every thread, right? You ever seen the back side of a tapestry where it's all, right? Well, each one of those threads is one of us. And if you were to pull one of those out and get rid of it, the rest of it would collapse and wouldn't work anymore. Every single one of us is so precious because we all have to be in that tapestry of life at a certain place, time, and when for that perfection to be created eventually by God. It's without every one of us, I don't think it would be capable. I don't know. It's just my sense that for the perfection to be achieved, we're all part of it, and we have to be. Yes.
What's your name?
Tony.
Tony, my name's Lou.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, see, the thing is, what you're saying is, it's eternal, but it's two truths. We live relative, and we live in this world. And then what you were saying, the world is really different from 1982 to now. And compassionately, not only, see, a lot of stuff you have to internalize it in yourself, that you can question it and expand it and explore it and apply it, and then see the ego and get away from the ego.
Yep.
And even the senses, it's amazing. If you look at the senses, but see, the thing is with the senses, when you have a pain, you automatically are concerned about the pain and you block yourself, and that's part of the ego of how you do it. But there's so much more beyond the senses if you work with senses and see it. But the whole thing is, even people that compassionately have seen you and they tell you that this is not so or anything like that, there are a lot of people, which is very important, is to protect the world the way it is. That is, we're in a relative world, and compassionately we have to consider everybody.
Right.
And all the confusion that you've gone through and where you've grown to become, a lot of those things, it's like beyond words, it's internalized inside you that you can grow on it, and then you apply it in life, and the very important thing is that's not enough. You have to help other people.
Right.
How you help other people and everything.
Well, that's once you get to this. Once you learn a certain amount, you get to the point where, at least me, where I have to go help people. I can't not do that.
Yeah, see, we've gone through different revelations. That is, like now we're in technology, and technology is even going to advance more than it is now. But we have to process that stuff. It's faster than before, and the world has been very slow. But we're growing. But it's very important that everybody grows. And you're right. We are all one, and it's all complete. You know, so I just mentioned that to give you some understanding, to make you feel that you're not alone, and a lot of people in this room have an understanding of what you're talking about, and they've had different experiences and conceptual, but even conceptual labels and everything. It's like going beyond all those things.
Way beyond.
Because if I'm saying I'm a man, automatically I label myself as a man, and I identify myself as a man. But now we are being more compassionate. Men are more understanding than before. They were so macho. Now they're more human, and this is how we have to grow. But we have to work with that stuff and process that stuff.
Yeah, it takes time to contemplate it and think it through. Yeah,
and the ego's still around, and this happens to people they block up and they hold on and they get something and you hold on to that.
That's why God's got a plan for everybody, every one of us, so nobody gets left out. Eventually, we all get to go home.
Yep.
Right here.
Thank you. First of all, this is absolutely fascinating. And the question I have is, you had two experiences, really. You had the one is the plane was, well, landing.
On the runway, the out-of-body experience, yeah.
Not a good landing, but a landing the one you walk away from.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying, any landing you walk away from is a good landing.
Good one, yeah.
I'm not so sure about that after what I did.
Yeah, that one was just what you were telling, which is terrifying.
It was.
Because, as you said, any moment,
I knew I was dead.
Seconds to live, you're dead. And that's very terrifying. And then you had your experience there being outside and inside the plane at the same time. And then, it was a few days later?
2 days later.
2 days later, you were safe at home, in your home, in bed. It's about as safe a place as one can be. And you have this second experience. And I'm curious if you've given any thought to why two experiences. I mean, I hear experience saying, well, I died and then it was this horribly traumatic thing. But you had delay, and I asked because that's what happened to me.
I'm sorry?
That's what happened to me.
Oh, okay.
Okay, my big experience did not happen when I was on the brink of death at all.
It was later.
It happened 2 weeks later. And so that's what really struck me, and I'm wondering if you have given any thought as to why the delay, if there was a reason for the delay, if you had any insight into that?
I don't know. I've thought about it, and I just don't really understand. One of the things I say is that somehow that out-of-body experience opened a doorway that I don't understand. And I know it did it. They're related somehow. What happened on Wednesday is definitely related to what happened on Monday. But I couldn't tell you how or explain it. But I know it in here, but I don't know how to explain it from here.
Denise is the next. I saw your hand after.
What's that?
Are you still carrying the PTSD or?
No, I got through that.
So after the epiphany?
After about the fourth or fifth touch and go on that Tuesday, when I was having the PTS experience,
so it was
I talked myself through it, and then after that, I was fine. I didn't ever have that problem again.
So was it before?
It happened on the first flight, on Tuesday on the first approach.
So it became before the bedroom?
Yes, it was in between the two events.
What?
Monday I had the incident where we ran out the runway. Tuesday was the refly, where I didn't have any spiritual experiences that day, I just had raw terror. And then Wednesday was when I had the spiritual experience, it's a spiritually transformative experience.
And then it was gone.
And what?
And then your PTS left?
It was gone before, that flight was over on Tuesday. I got through it and just pushed it out. I was like, I can't do that anymore. I'm like, my job and my career was more important than me, and I'm not going to deal with that anymore. I just shut it off. So it's done. Didn't want it anymore. I said, I'm going to be fine. I just told myself I'm fine.
Well, I've been kind of working with it.
Yeah, and I never had a problem with that on any approach again after that, on landing or anything. That wasn't what affected me. What affected me most was having the pastor turn his back on me and walk off, and having my wife, in a sense, say, I don't want people thinking I'm married to a nut job, or the lieutenant commander saying, you better shut up about it, you're going to lose your security clearance, and they're going to kick you out of the military. So those are the things that created a moral injury that affected me for decades. That's what really hurt. And I didn't even understand that. And plus, I was also grieving for a long time from the loss of the greatest love I ever knew or will ever know. And I didn't even understand that. Okay? I had no one to tell me anything. I had to sort it all out by myself. That's hard to do. That's why I help people, because I don't want them going through that. Yes?
So, for what it's worth, I was in the same shoes as by myself. But I had a question for you. I'm wondering, did your dream pattern change after having the enlightenment moment?
If what happened?
Did your dream pattern change? Dreaming more, dreaming about having prophesying dreams?
Not really. I've had some dreams that seem like, and I've had some that I know something will happen, but I wasn't allowed to remember it, but I clearly knew it was a different something. So I believe we leave our bodies every night, and we go there for counseling and whatever they do on that side to help us here to prepare for the next day. Souls never rest. They don't need sleep. Okay? They're eternal. They don't get tired. That's a human thing.
Now, I feel bad that the church, and the Jewish religion I'm part of also, when you talk about these things, they say you're crazy. And that was the experience that I had when I was in Jerusalem at the time. It's a shame that organized religion can't accept that and help it and to just dismiss it.
You know why? Because organized religion is about control.
Control, right. Yeah,
and money.
Yeah, I understand.
All right, and
but the reason I bring it up is I just checked my email a few hours before coming here, and I saw I got 2 emails about 2 people that I know they were veterans. I know they served, and somehow mysteriously they both died within the last 2 days. Mysterious, and rather than saying it's a suicide, one said it was a heart attack, and the other one said it was a stroke. So when I emailed the wife of one of the people I knew for many years, and they said they had to call it that it was a stroke, but it was suicide. It was the fact that he never was able to deal with the PTSD from what he experienced in Vietnam. And I don't know, what can we do to help? I mean, to me, just...
Well, one of the speakers that we're going to have in the IANDS group is, at the IANDS conference this year, is Bill McDonald.
Yeah.
Bill McDonald he was an air crew on a pretty good sized airplane that had, I think, 10 air crew personnel on it. And they crashed in Vietnam. Literally all 10 of them walked out of the airplane that was totally broken up and destroyed after they got shot down. And he had his experience in the middle of all that. So he's also understanding, he had some of the same things happen to him. He didn't get validated and all that. But almost all the guys on that plane had something happen, a spiritual experience of some sort. So that's part of what we're doing now, and I'm working with him. And that's the main focus of the IANDS conference this year, is to help combat veterans especially, who have had experiences and they don't know what happened to them. They don't understand. They don't know where to go to get help. And they are having a moral injury that's not being treated. And that's what we're trying to help them get through.
Just a thought. I have a friend that's a veteran and he lives in Massachusetts, and he's into the whole Tibetan singing bowls.
Yeah, I have one.
And he goes once a week to the VA in Massachusetts, somewhere near Munson, and he plays the bowls for an hour of meditation, and it's all vets with PTSD. And those are all mostly Vietnam vets. But when he tried that with the Iraqi vets, they didn't like the sound of the bowls because it reminded them of the mosques. Mm-hmm. So with them, he does drumming. And that works with them.
When you're doing things with sound, it stops the thinking.
Exactly.
Okay? One of the ways to make your connection with spirit is to shut the mind off. Right. The only way is to shut the mind off. Mm-hmm. Because with the mind rattling on, God can't reach in there and talk to you. You won't shut up. You know, it's just kind of that simple. And we have this running dialogue in our head all day long. That's human nature. And part of what I believe I'm here to learn to do is to calm that down and be conscious and aware of God laying the path out ahead before me as I walk through the day, and knowing that everything's going to be taken care of, and I don't have to worry about it. And if I have a problem, I decree about it, and then I forget about it. Because if I keep running it through my head all day, I'm actually putting energy out there that's counterproductive to what God needs to do to help me. Because I'm not showing faith by shutting my head off and saying, take care of it, God, I can't do it, you do it, I know you will. And let it go. The old saying, let go and let God, has a lot more, there's a lot more to that than we understand.
The energy too.
Yeah.
And sound has energy too.
Yeah,
That's a big
it's all
part.
energy. That's why I'm saying these books from the St. Germain Foundation, the IANDs discourses, they are not religion. They're not anything like that. And we don't proselytize. It actually says in the books, I'm not supposed to do that. I can tell you about the books, but I'm not going to tell you what to believe about them or anything. You need to go read them yourself. And as I read through them, I picked up on things that some other person would not, and they would pick up on other things that I wouldn't, because we've each had different life experiences and different things will resonate with us of truth in these books. And my experience of having been in the light, when I read those words, liquid, molten gold, and white light, I knew I had no books I ever read anywhere else had those words in one sentence that expressed, that described what I saw. And I've been looking for over 30 years.
Henning, were you able to wear a watch before your experience?
I don't remember. That was a long time ago.
Okay.
I believe I had watches, but I just quit wearing them after a while after that because they kept breaking. I just said, I'm not doing that anymore. It's a waste of money. And I didn't make a lot of money in the military, you know.
Okay, well, the watch thing is a very common result of blinking lights.
Yeah, it happens a lot.
Have you had any really unusual events dealing with electrical things?
Well, I went out and got a degree in information technology, which was probably a mistake because I have so many problems with the computer stuff, and I don't know if I'm generating it or it's a real problem, you know?
The higher your frequency goes, the more problems I have. I had a problem with it. My refrigerator went, my computer went, and I had a car problem. Because you bring in your vibration up.
Yeah.
So, and people will tell you to be careful if you're really expanding your consciousness.
Yeah, well, the books talk about that, about being careful with that, because that's powerful energy you're releasing. And we're held accountable for that. So all of that energy, when we re-qualify it, the way we get held accountable is through karmic reaction of the universe, giving us our love lessons.
Yeah.
It's all about love lessons.
Bob did it.
I'm going to zip through these pictures a little bit so you can see the last of them.
There's more?
Oh, now, yeah.
Okay, oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that's another EP3, and that's all that one, runways. Let's see if I forgot anything. No, that was it. We got everything. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. You were so interesting.